Welcome to this deep dive
Oh, good.
where we're going to be exploring Jewish law and tradition.
Yes.
And we are going to be uncovering some fascinating insights from a collection of lectures that you shared with me.
Right.
And these aren't your typical dry lectures, though.
Well,
They actually blend legal interpretations
yeah,
with historical context and
Mm.
philosophical reflections.
that's right.
And we're going to be touching upon some intriguing concepts
Yeah.
like the intricacies of ancient temple rituals,
Oh,
the ethical implications of everyday actions,
Yep.
and the lasting impact of prophets. It's
absolutely.
going to be quite a journey.
Yeah, these lectures are far from a dry recitation of rules.
Yeah.
They really delve into the heart of what it means to live a life guided by the principles of the Torah.
And that idea of truly living by the Torah is
Yeah.
something that really jumped out at me.
Okay.
It's not just about passively reading it.
Right.
It's about internalizing the teachings and applying them to every aspect of your daily life.
You've hit on a key point.
Okay.
It's about bridging the gap between theory and practice,
Right.
which is often easier said than done.
Yeah.
For instance, think about the prohibition against eating blood.
Okay.
At first glance, it might seem like just another dietary rule.
Uh-huh.
However, when you delve deeper,
Yeah.
you see that it's actually about recognizing the sanctity of life
Okay.
and respecting the life force that exists within animals.
It's amazing how these seemingly simple laws
Right.
can have such profound implications. It
Mhm.
reminds me of that story from the lectures about the man who instructs his wife to be quick in giving charity,
Right.
believing that their kindness will be repaid by God when they face hardship.
Uh-huh.
It really illustrates how intertwined these principles are with daily life.
That story beautifully encapsulates the Jewish belief in a cyclical nature of fortune and misfortune.
Yeah.
By acting ethically, you're not just fulfilling a religious duty. You're actively participating in this cosmic dance of giving and receiving.
I love that analogy of a cosmic dance.
Yeah.
Really brings the concept to life.
Absolutely.
And while we're on the topic of justice,
Uh-huh.
these lectures delve into the fascinating and surprisingly intricate legal system within Jewish law.
Right.
The role of witnesses, for example, is so central,
Absolutely.
and their testimony carries immense weight.
The system really prioritizes fairness and due process.
Okay.
False accusations are treated with the utmost seriousness,
Right.
and the consequences for bearing false witness can be severe.
Yeah.
And what's truly captivating is how this emphasis on witnessing ties directly into the execution of punishment,
Okay.
especially in cases of capital punishment.
Now that you mention it, I do remember that being highlighted.
Uh-huh.
What exactly was the connection there?
In ancient Israel, there were no designated executioners.
Really?
Instead, the very witnesses who testified against the accused were the ones tasked with carrying out the sentence. Imagine the weight of that responsibility.
Yeah.
It wasn't simply a matter of observation.
Right.
It was about active participation in the justice system.
Yeah.
It makes you ponder the gravity associated with bearing witness.
That's a powerful concept.
Yeah.
And it definitely highlights how seriously they approached legal matters.
Absolutely.
Speaking of weighty topics,
Okay.
the lectures also discuss the dangers of idolatry, which
Right.
is clearly a significant transgression in Jewish tradition.
Idolatry isn't simply about choosing another deity. For
Right.
the Israelites, their covenant with God was the bedrock of their existence,
Mm-hmm.
their identity,
Their protection.
their protection.
Yeah.
Turning to idols represented a complete severing of that foundational relationship.
I see.
It was almost like committing a form of national treason.
And that perspective really sheds light on why it was viewed so severely.
Yeah.
The lectures even described this dramatic ritual of publicly declaring blessings and curses related to following or straying from God's path. It took place between the mountains of Gerizim and Ebal,
Right.
which must have been quite a spectacle.
It's almost as if they were using the natural landscape to amplify the significance of this choice between obedience and disobedience.
Wow.
And let's not forget the consequences for an entire city that succumbed to idolatry.
It wasn't exactly a slap on the wrist.
Oh,
was it?
no, not at all.
Yeah.
We're talking complete destruction,
Wow.
a permanent ban on rebuilding.
Okay.
This emphasizes just how seriously this transgression was perceived.
Right.
It wasn't simply a matter of personal belief.
Uh-huh.
It was seen as a threat to the very fabric of the community.
Now, shifting gears a bit, I found the topic of prophets and dreams particularly interesting.
Okay.
They hold a prominent place in Jewish tradition.
Yeah.
But it's clear that it's not as straightforward as blindly accepting everything a prophet says.
You've hit on a crucial point.
Okay.
The lectures emphasize the importance of discernment. Just because someone claims to be a prophet or even performs miracles doesn't automatically guarantee their legitimacy. There's a real need to carefully evaluate their claims.
Which raises the question, how do you differentiate a true prophet from a false one?
Right.
Can't be an easy task.
It's a question that has puzzled people for centuries.
Yeah.
The lectures even raise the intriguing possibility that God might allow false prophets to perform miracles as a test of faith.
Wow.
Think about that for a moment.
Yeah.
How would you navigate such a complex situation?
Right.
How could you discern genuine divine intervention from mere trickery?
Yeah.
It's a fascinating dilemma.
It certainly makes you consider the complexities of faith and the importance of seeking guidance from trusted sources.
Absolutely.
Especially when it comes to interpreting dreams and predicting the future.
Yes.
This leads us to another key concept highlighted in the lectures.
Okay.
A power of unity within the Jewish community.
This concept of Klal Yisrael,
Right.
the collective responsibility of the Jewish people, is deeply woven into Jewish tradition.
Okay.
There's a strong emphasis on avoiding division and nurturing harmony,
Right.
even if it requires adapting personal practices to maintain communal peace.
I was struck by that example of the importance of following local customs,
Yeah.
even if they differ from your personal practices.
Uh-huh.
It speaks volumes about prioritizing the needs of the community over individual preferences.
That's precisely it.
Yeah.
And this principle extends even to mourning rituals.
Okay.
Self-harm and excessive displays of grief are prohibited, underlining the value placed on life and the need for healthy forms of mourning.
Right.
It's about finding a balance between honoring the deceased and recognizing the importance of moving forward.
And let's not forget the whole system of blessings and curses that seems to permeate these lectures. The rewards for following God's commandments are pretty extraordinary.
Yeah.
Prosperity, health,
Right.
peace, all the good things in life.
Yeah.
But the punishments for disobedience,
Yeah.
well, let's just say they paint a rather vivid picture of hardship.
You're right.
Yeah.
We're talking natural disasters,
Okay.
military defeats,
Yeah.
exile,
Right.
a whole catalog of suffering.
Yeah.
It's not just about abstract concepts of heaven and hell.
Right.
It's about the tangible consequences of your actions in this world,
Yeah.
both for yourself and the world around you.
Okay.
And then, of course, there's the towering figure of Moses,
Right.
the ultimate leader and lawgiver.
Yeah.
The lectures don't shy away from the emotional impact of his death.
The mysteries surrounding his final resting place,
Right.
the 30 days of mourning,
Yeah.
the sense of loss,
Uh-huh.
and the acknowledgement that his leadership was irreplaceable. It's
Absolutely.
all incredibly moving.
Yeah, and the fact that the Torah itself concludes with the death of Moses,
Yeah.
the very man who brought it into being,
Right.
adds another layer of depth. It suggests that his work, his legacy, continues to resonate and guide even in his absence.
It's a powerful reminder that tradition is a living thing,
Yes.
constantly evolving and being reinterpreted by each generation.
Absolutely.
It's not a static set of rules,
Right.
but a dynamic dialogue that spans centuries.
Mm-hmm.
But before we delve too deeply into the philosophical implications,
Okay.
maybe we should explore some of the more specific ways Jewish law impacts daily life.
Right.
What else caught your attention?
One thing that really struck me was the discussion about the law surrounding unintentional manslaughter
Okay.
and the establishment of cities of refuge.
Uh-huh.
It's such a fascinating example of how Jewish law strives to balance justice with compassion.
Now that you mention it, I remember being surprised by that as well.
Yeah.
The idea of designated cities for individuals who accidentally killed someone.
Right.
I have to admit, I hadn't heard of that before.
Really?
What was the reasoning behind that system?
It's actually quite a thoughtful approach.
Ah.
Imagine someone who committed unintentional manslaughter.
Mm-hmm.
They could flee to one of these cities to escape the wrath of the avenger of blood,
Okay.
a family member of the victim who had the right to seek retribution.
So it functioned like a legal safe haven of sorts.
Exactly.
Okay.
It offered individuals a chance to have their case heard and potentially avoid being unjustly punished for a crime they didn't commit intentionally.
Right.
And here's a detail I found particularly insightful.
Okay.
These cities had to be easily accessible
Right.
with well-maintained roads and clear signage.
Now that's unexpected.
Yeah?
Why go to such lengths for someone accused of a crime, even if it was accidental?
It underscores the profound concern for the well-being of even those accused of wrongdoing.
Okay.
The focus was on ensuring a fair trial and protecting the individual,
Right.
even in cases of accidental death.
I see.
It's a far cry from the eye for an eye mentality that many people might assume characterized ancient law.
It certainly demonstrates a much more nuanced approach to justice. Okay, shifting gears a bit. I was intrigued by the discussion on the prohibition against consuming meat and dairy together.
Right.
It's such a fundamental principle in Jewish dietary law,
Uh-huh.
but I have to admit I've always wondered about its origins.
You're referring to the separation of milk and meat.
Yeah.
And it all stems from a seemingly simple verse in the Torah
Okay.
that forbids boiling a kid in its mother's milk.
Right, but how did that one verse evolve into this elaborate system of keeping meat and dairy entirely separate?
It's a fantastic example of how Jewish law has been interpreted and expanded upon over time. Rabbinic scholars seeking to understand the deeper meaning behind that verse
Okay.
developed a comprehensive set of rules designed to prevent any possibility of mixing meat and dairy.
Wow.
This led to separate dishes,
Okay.
pots,
Uh-huh.
pans, even separate sinks,
Yeah.
all dedicated to maintaining this division.
It makes you realize that when you're dealing with ancient texts, there's always room for interpretation and adaptation.
Right.
I wonder what Moses would think about all these additions to the original laws.
That brings up a really interesting point about the interplay between the written law of the Torah and the oral tradition in Judaism.
Okay.
While the Torah is considered the foundational text,
Uh-huh.
it's the ongoing interpretations and debates within the community that truly shape how those laws are understood and applied in daily life.
It's like this continuous evolving conversation across generations,
Absolutely.
with each generation contributing its own insights and perspectives.
Right.
And speaking of insights,
Okay.
there was a section in the lectures about the prohibition against self-harm that I found quite thought-provoking.
That prohibition stems from a larger emphasis on respecting the sanctity of life
Okay.
and viewing the body as a vessel for the soul.
Mm-hmm.
Self-harm or any mourning rituals that involve inflicting pain are seen as violations of this core principle.
So it's not simply about avoiding physical harm.
Right.
It's about a deeper reverence for the gift of life.
Precisely. And this respect for life extends beyond humans to animals as well.
Uh-huh.
Remember the prohibition against consuming blood?
Right.
There are also specific laws that govern how animals should be slaughtered to minimize their suffering.
It's incredible how all these seemingly disparate laws are interconnected,
Yeah,
reflecting a consistent set of values at their core.
absolutely.
And on a related note, the lectures also highlighted the importance of education and lifelong learning within Judaism.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Learning is considered a lifelong pursuit,
Uh-huh.
with a strong emphasis on studying the Torah and the other sacred texts.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not simply about accumulating knowledge.
Yeah.
It's about deepening your understanding of God's will and using that knowledge to live a more meaningful life.
It's almost like a spiritual form of exercise,
Yeah.
constantly challenging your mind and soul to grow.
I like that analogy.
Okay.
And it's not just about individual growth either.
Right.
There's an obligation to share your knowledge and teach others.
Uh-huh.
Imparting wisdom is considered a mitzvah.
That's a good deed. Now, what about the more practical aspects of life?
Yeah.
Marriage and family.
Hmm.
Did the lectures touch on those topics as well?
They certainly did.
Okay.
Marriage is viewed as a sacred institution in Judaism,
Right.
and there are specific laws that govern everything from how to conduct a wedding ceremony to the responsibilities of husbands and wives.
Okay.
There are even laws that address divorce, should it come to that.
I imagine things were quite different back then compared to modern dating and relationships.
You could say that arranged marriages were commonplace,
Right.
and the role of women in society was very different from what we see today.
Uh-huh.
But it's important to remember that these laws were developed within a specific historical and cultural context.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's about understanding those nuances and trying to grasp the underlying principles behind these practices, even if some aspects might seem outdated by today's standards.
Okay.
Is there anything else that particularly stood out to you from the lectures?
One of the things that left a lasting impression on me was the emphasis on the ethical implications of even seemingly mundane actions.
Okay.
For instance, there's an entire section
Yeah.
devoted to how individuals should treat their workers and animals.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that ethical conduct isn't just about grand gestures.
Right.
It's about those small, everyday choices that we make.
Exactly.
What were some of the specific teachings on that?
Well, for example, there are laws that mandate paying workers on time,
Okay.
prohibiting the withholding of wages,
Uh,
and ensuring they have adequate time for rest.
It's as if the Torah is saying,
Yeah,
listen, even if you're the boss, you can't treat people however you want.
Well,
There are rules.
exactly.
Okay.
And this ethical framework extends to animals as well.
Uh-huh.
There are prohibitions against cruelty to animals,
Okay.
and there are even laws about assisting a burdened animal,
Right.
even if it belongs to your enemy.
That's a truly remarkable level of compassion.
It is.
It speaks to a fundamental principle of treating all living beings with dignity and respect.
Absolutely.
That's a message that transcends religious boundaries and holds relevance for everyone, regardless of their beliefs.
I completely agree.
Okay.
And then there's the concept of lashon hara, which essentially translates to evil speech or gossip.
Right.
The lectures really underscored the power of words
Okay.
and the potential harm that can be caused by spreading rumors or speaking negatively about others.
You know, there's that old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Yeah,
But it seems the Torah is saying, hold on a minute.
right.
Words can definitely hurt, and we need to be mindful of the language we use.
The Torah even goes so far as to compare lashon hara to murder.
Wow.
It's a stark reminder that our words carry real consequences and that we have a responsibility to use them wisely and thoughtfully.
It's a powerful message, and it feels especially relevant in our current age of social media, where negativity and misinformation can spread like wildfire.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's a challenge we all face.
Uh-huh.
How to use this incredibly powerful tool for good rather than harm.
Well, I think these lectures offer valuable guidance on that front.
Absolutely.
And on so many other aspects of life.
Yeah.
We've really just scratched the surface of the wealth of insights they contain.
It's true.
So as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive,
Okay.
what are some key takeaways for our listener?
Well,
I think one crucial point is that Jewish law and tradition are not merely a set of rigid rules.
right.
They're a framework for living a life filled with meaning and ethical purpose.
Uh-huh.
They challenge us to examine our actions,
Yes.
our words,
Right.
and our impact on the world around us.
They also invite us to embark on a journey of lifelong learning,
Okay.
questioning, and interpretation.
Uh-huh.
Tradition is not stagnant.
Right.
It's a dynamic and evolving conversation
Mhm.
that spans generations.
And here's a final thought-provoking question for our listener to ponder. Could the detailed descriptions of curses for disobedience be interpreted not simply as threats, but as cautionary tales?
Right.
A stark warning about the potential consequences of our choices,
Yeah.
not only in a spiritual sense, but
Right.
also in terms of their ripple effects on society and future generations.
It's a compelling question that urges us to consider the long-term ramifications of our actions.
Right.
What kind of legacy do we want to leave behind?
Yeah.
One of blessing or one of curse?
It's certainly a question worth contemplating.
Absolutely.
But for now, we'll pause our deep dive here.
Okay.
Join us in part 2 as we continue to explore these fascinating concepts and uncover even more insights from these lectures.
Sounds good. Picking up where we left off, I'd like to touch on a topic that I found particularly intriguing.
Okay.
The concept of zara'at,
Right.
often translated as leprosy, but encompassing a broader range of skin afflictions
Okay.
and even issues with mold in homes.
That's right. I remember that being mentioned in the lectures.
Yeah.
It seemed like it went beyond just a physical ailment. There was a
Uh-huh.
spiritual dimension to it as well, wasn't there?
Exactly.
Yeah.
In these lectures, zara'at is explored not simply as a medical condition,
Okay.
but as a potential outward manifestation of spiritual disharmony.
Uh-huh.
It's fascinating how the lectures connect this outward manifestation with the concept of lashon hara,
Right.
the harmful speech we discussed earlier.
You mean to say that speaking negatively about others could lead to physical ailments?
Yeah.
It sounds like something out of a morality tale.
It's certainly thought-provoking, isn't it?
Yeah.
The lectures suggest that negative speech, gossip,
Right.
slander, these actions
Yeah.
can create a kind of spiritual imbalance
Okay.
that might manifest in physical ways,
I see.
including these skin afflictions.
It highlights the interconnectedness between our inner world and our outer experience.
Exactly.
It makes you reconsider the weight of our words and the potential impact they have not only on others, but on ourselves as well. Absolutely. It's a powerful reminder to be mindful of what we say and how we say it.
And While we're on the subject of weighty matters,
Okay.
let's delve into a topic that might seem a bit paradoxical at first glance.
Right.
The concept of Red Heifer,
Okay.
the prohibition against placing a stumbling block before the blind.
I vaguely recall that being mentioned, but I'm not sure I fully grasp the concept.
Okay.
What exactly does it mean to place a stumbling block before the blind?
Right.
It sounds quite literal.
While it can be interpreted literally, it also has a much deeper meaning.
Okay.
It's about recognizing our responsibility to not only refrain from causing physical harm, but also to avoid leading others astray,
Okay.
whether intentionally or unintentionally.
But it's about being mindful of the potential consequences of our actions,
Yeah.
especially when those actions could negatively impact others.
Precisely.
Okay.
For instance, it could mean offering bad advice knowing it's wrong, or even creating an environment that enables someone to engage in harmful behavior.
I see.
The principle of Red Heifer encourages us to be sensitive to the needs of others
Right.
and to recognize our role in shaping their choices,
Right.
even in subtle ways.
That's a profound concept.
It is.
It extends the notion of ethical responsibility beyond just our immediate actions to encompass the broader impact we have on the people around us.
Right.
It's about creating a supportive and ethical environment for everyone to thrive in.
Well said.
Now, shifting gears a bit, let's explore another fascinating aspect of Jewish law.
Okay.
The laws surrounding tuma and tahara, often translated as impurity and purity.
Right.
These concepts are central to understanding many rituals and practices within Judaism.
Absolutely.
I remember finding those concepts a bit confusing.
Yeah.
It wasn't like dirty versus clean in the conventional sense, was it?
Not quite.
Yeah.
These concepts go beyond simple hygiene. In these lectures, tuma is presented as a state of spiritual detachment or separation,
I see.
while tahara represents a state of spiritual connection or wholeness.
Okay.
It's about our relationship with the divine
Right.
and the ways in which certain life events or experiences can
Yeah.
impact that connection.
So coming into contact with certain things or experiencing certain events could create a sense of spiritual distance,
Yeah.
which then required specific rituals to restore that sense of connection.
Exactly.
Wait.
For instance, coming into contact with death, childbirth,
Right.
certain bodily fluids.
Wow.
These could all create a state of tuma.
I see.
And various rituals, often involving immersion in a mikveh,
Right.
a ritual bath, were required to achieve tahara.
It's interesting how these concepts weave together physical actions with spiritual states.
Right.
It's not just about outward cleanliness, it's about inner purification and reconnection.
Precisely. It underscores the holistic nature of Jewish law and its focus on aligning our physical actions with our spiritual intentions.
Now, I have to admit that I was initially taken aback by the level of detail and specificity in some of these laws. It felt quite overwhelming at first.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
It's a common reaction when first encountering the intricacies of Jewish law.
Right.
But if we step back and look at the bigger picture,
Okay.
these detailed laws serve a few important purposes. For one, they create a framework for living a mindful and intentional life.
Right.
Every action, even seemingly mundane ones, can be infused with meaning and purpose.
So it's not just about following rules for the sake of following rules.
Right.
It's about creating a structure that encourages a deeper awareness of the choices we make and the impact those choices have.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about transforming the mundane into the sacred,
Right.
finding the divine in the everyday.
I like that, finding the divine in the everyday.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful concept. Is there anything else you'd like to highlight before we move on to part 3?
Let's touch briefly on the concept of teshuvah,
Okay.
which is often translated as repentance, but carries a much richer meaning.
All right.
In these lectures, it's presented as a process of introspection,
Okay.
self-correction, and ultimately return.
Return to what exactly?
Right.
A
Yes.
return to a state of spiritual purity.
You could say that.
Okay.
It's about recognizing when we've strayed from our path, taking responsibility for our actions, and actively seeking to realign ourselves with our values
Okay.
and our relationship with the divine.
I see.
It's a powerful concept. It
Yeah.
emphasizes the potential for growth and transformation.
It's a reminder that we're not defined by our mistakes,
Right.
that there's always an opportunity for course correction and renewal.
Absolutely.
With that inspiring thought, I think it's a good place to pause for now.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground in this second part of our deep dive, but there's still much more to explore. Join us in part 3 as we continue to uncover the fascinating insights within these lectures. As we dive into this final part of our exploration,
Okay.
I'm struck by how these lectures have painted such a vivid picture of Jewish law and tradition, not as a rigid set of rules, but as a dynamic tapestry woven from intricate legal interpretations, ethical principles, and profound spiritual insights.
It's true.
Okay.
What I find most compelling is how these teachings encourage us to engage with life on multiple levels.
Okay.
The physical, the intellectual, and the spiritual. It's not just about adhering to a set of external regulations. It's about cultivating a way of being in the world.
Okay.
A way of seeing, thinking, and acting.
Yeah.
That's infused with meaning and purpose.
And speaking of purpose, one of the themes that really resonated with me was the emphasis on the concept of mitzvot.
Right.
Often translated as commandments, but carrying a much deeper connotation.
Yes, the concept of mitzvot is central to Jewish life. In these lectures, they're presented not merely as obligations or restrictions, but as opportunities to connect with the divine, to refine our character, and to contribute to the betterment of the world.
So it's not about blindly following rules out of fear of punishment or a desire for reward. It's about actively choosing to engage in actions that bring us closer to God, to ourselves, and to others.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that even seemingly small acts can have a ripple effect, creating positive change in our lives and in the world around us.
I love that perspective, seeing a mitzvot as opportunities rather than burdens. It shifts the whole dynamic from a sense of obligation to one of empowerment and joyful participation.
And that sense of joy is something that shines through in these lectures, even when discussing seemingly complex or challenging topics. There's a deep appreciation for the beauty and wisdom embedded within Jewish tradition. Even in its most intricate details.
I'd have to agree, it's been quite a journey.
Absolutely. Exploring these concepts and uncovering the layers of meaning within them. As we wrap up our deep dive, what final thoughts or insights would you like to leave our listener with?
I think the most important takeaway is that Jewish law and tradition are not static relics of the past. They offer a living, breathing framework for navigating the complexities of life, for cultivating a sense of purpose, and for connecting with something larger than ourselves. They invite us to engage in a continuous process of learning, questioning, and growth, both individually and as a community.
That's beautifully put.
Thank you.
It's not just about acquiring knowledge. It's about applying that knowledge to live a more meaningful and ethical life. A life that's aligned with our values and our aspirations.
And ultimately, I think these teachings encourage us to approach life with a sense of awe and wonder. To appreciate the beauty and interconnectedness of all things.
And to recognize our role as active participants in the unfolding story of creation.
What a profound and inspiring way to conclude our exploration.
Thank you.
We've journeyed through intricate legal system, delved into the ethical dimensions of everyday actions, and pondered the mysteries of the spiritual realm.
It's been quite a journey.
It's been a true deep dive, filled with thought-provoking insights and unexpected connections.
Absolutely.
Well,
it's been a privilege to share this journey with you and our listener.
And to our listener, we encourage you to continue exploring these rich and complex topics. There's a wealth of wisdom and beauty to be discovered within Jewish law and tradition.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes, thank you.
And may your own journey of discovery be filled with wonder and illumination.